Are we ready? So my teacher, right, who I, not someone I actually studied with, I wouldn't quite call it that, I didn't quite study with, right, but just we shared a space and we communicated a couple of insanely beautiful times, right? So I mentioned in one of our talks in what we call the Dharma Circle, we talked about he would come at like 10 at night, and at 3 in the morning, when the last people were there, that's when he would say it, right? So we're not doing performance. We're not looking for likes. We're not in a Facebook monetized app. We got to go inside the source code now and actually find our way. And we're gonna find our way to literally a new world. Okay? Literally a new world. Okay? So we in? We in? Okay, good. So totally with you. Ready to go. Here we go. So, and I'm gonna go a little bit slow. Right? I want to go a little bit slow because I want to try and kind of capture this and try and capture it deeply, okay? So our topic, cheers, 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 l'chaim. L'chaim, cheers, salud, salud, salud. We raise our glasses. Who wants to raise a glass? Let's raise our glass. If you got some wine, time to break out some wine. Get some wine, pour a drink. Let's raise our glasses. Who's raising their glass? Let's raise my coffee cup, raising my glass. Salud. Salud. Yes. Yes, here we go. Okay. So we're going to go kind of crazy deep here, and I want to try and break something open. Okay? And I was boxing with my friend Daniel on this morning, and Zach and I were talking about it last week. Right? I want to go all the way. Okay? Cappuccino, Anu. Cappuccino. Give that man Venu a kiss. Okay? Here we go. So we're going to get in the end to conspiracy theories and to false flags. So I'm going to say a couple of words about that to start, but then I want to we got to go deeper in to know what's happening and how to hold this. And that's our job in sense making. That's the job, right? One church, many paths, one mountain. And our sister, right? Independent movements, but sisters to us, the Center for Integral Wisdom, the Foundation for Conscious Evolution. Barbara, we're ready to go. And the Office for the Future. Okay, the Office for the Future. And if I can, I want to just ask you for a second to be with me, right? This is the sense-making process we're about to do, right? Is an expression of the Office for the Future. The Office for the Future is a term coined by my beloved evolutionary partner, Barbara Marx Hubbard. And in about 2 or 3 weeks, we're actually going to be opening for the first time a web presence for the Office for the Future. So what is the Office for the Future? And I want to just meditate this with you for a second. So I'm going to turn off my video. And I just want to be with you in voice for a second, okay? What is the Office for the Future? The Office for the Future, originally named by my evolutionary partner, Barbara Marx Hubbard. The Office for the Future understands that sense-making is essential. And that sense-making is the way we can imagine into the new future. And that every crisis at its core is a crisis of intimacy and a crisis of imagination. To heal the crisis of intimacy, we need to reimagine new intimacies, but new intimacies in the sense of an intimate universe, new intimacies in economies, new intimacies in politics, new intimacies in relationships, new intimacies in organizational structures, new intimacies in national budgets. And we're in this moment of transformation. We're very much like the caterpillar that's desperate to turn into a butterfly. And when the caterpillar nears its transformation time, it begins to eat ravenously, right? Consuming, right? Does that sound familiar? It's how we identify ourselves these days, right? As consumers. And let's meditate this together, friends, right? As you listen, hear this not as information in the surface sense, but the information, the very formation of reality. We've defined ourselves as consumers. We take in, we take in, we take in, we take in, and we try and cover up the emptiness. The caterpillar body, which is the body politic, which is our body, becomes heavy. Obesity explodes in the world. We outgrow our skin many times. The caterpillar outgrows its skin until it's too bloated to move. It's too bloated to even move. Then the caterpillar attaches to a branch. Right? It's upside down, the caterpillar is, because like this moment, everything's turned on its head. And the caterpillar forms a chrysalis. The chrysalis is an enclosing shell. The caterpillar's freedom is limited, like the lockdown of COVID-19. The caterpillar is on lockdown for the duration of the transformation. But within the chrysalis, right, a biological phenomena of radical amazement that can only be held in rapt attention, and holding something in rapt attention is what it means. A miracle. A miracle means morari, to hold in rapt attention. So open your heart with me if you can. Open your mind. Open your biological, scientific mind. Literally, in the caterpillar, tiny cells, what biologists, right, tiny cells, what biologists actually call imaginal cells, begin to appear. And these cells are wholly different from the earlier structure of the caterpillar, the earlier caterpillar cells. And these new cells carry new codes. We might call them evolutionary love codes, in the language of our society today, right? These new codes, they carry different information, right? They literally resonate to a different frequency. These new codes, these imaginal cells, are holding a memory of the future. It's the frequency of the emergence that will come from the emergency. And at first, of course, the caterpillar's immune system, right, perceives these new cells as enemies, and they're attacked. Why are you talking about the second shock of existence? Why are you talking about crisis? Let's just be happy, right? The prophet is always killed, and we all need to be prophets together. We all need to be seers together. We all need to be sacred futurists together. We all need to realize and sense make beyond the status quo. So in the caterpillar, the immune system perceives these new cells and experiences them as enemies and attacks them, just like new structures, just like new narratives in science and medicine and politics, new narratives of identity, new narratives of social behavior are denounced, are ignored, are considered fringe by the mainstream. But the imaginal cells, and we are the imaginal cells, friends, but the imaginal cells in the caterpillar, they don't look away. They're not deterred. They continue to appear in greater number, and every person listening right now is an imaginal cell. The imaginal cells continue to appear in even greater numbers, recognizing each other, bonding, right? Allured together, we come together. It's why you're listening. It's why we're hearing each other. Until the new cells, the imaginal cells, are numerous enough to self-organize into a new configuration of intimacy, into a new structure, into a new human and a new humanity. When enough cells in the caterpillar have formed to make structures along the new organizational lines, the old immune system of the caterpillar is overwhelmed. The caterpillar body becomes open, a nutritious soup, which grows the butterfly. And then the butterfly begins to go as the imaginal cells talk to each other and reimagine reality. And the crisis of imagination is healed and transformed until the butterfly is ready to explode. And when it's ready, the chrysalis becomes transparent. The lockdown is over. The need for restriction has been outgrown. And freedom emerges, and a butterfly explodes. We are together here. We are the office for the future. And we're articulating a memory of the future. Friends, we are. And that was just a meditation to take us in. Right? What we want to do here today is articulate this memory of the future. And we want to talk about information and conspiracy theories and false flags. And we can't talk about it independently. You ready? We can't talk about it independently of the intimate universe. You can't even begin to approach conspiracy theory and how we hold them independently of the intimate universe. Okay? So let's dive in. So here's statement one. I'm just gonna go through a bunch of statements, and I probably have 100 pages of notes that I took through the night that are strewn right across this desk. So we're just gonna go slow and gentle, right? No performance, we're hanging out together. Is that good? Are we together? We loving each other? Okay, I'll pour love into you, you pour love into me. And from that space in between, we're gonna find each other, okay? Like total intimacy between us, right? We're loving, we're all holding hands, all, right? We're together. So statement one, right? Anyone who believes every conspiracy theory is true is a fool. But anyone who believes there's absolutely nothing to conspiracy theories is a bigger fool, okay? The mistake of conspiracy theories, even the best ones, is they take partial truths, partial insights, and they turn them into whole insights. And you have to know how to read and listen deeply. So you're listening to conspiracy theory and you recognize fact one, fact two, fact three. Oh, that's right, that's right, that's right. We talked last week, right? The 5G conspiracy theory, right? Articulated by Mr. Ick. And I'm delighted to do a public dialogue with you at any time. But let's get this straight. You make some really good points, but then you make leaps. You're not telling people you're making leaps. Yes, we haven't tested 5G technology. It's not sufficiently tested. That's true. The 5G communications technology. And it's also true that 4G technology hasn't been sufficiently tested. And it's also true that the corona outbreaks don't map, as you claim they did, onto the places, right, where 5G technology is at its strongest. They actually don't map. That's actually not true. The maps are filled with holes. Number four, right, from the correct intuition that 5G technology is not properly vetted, we add, neither was 4G, neither was 3G, and we've got a fundamental problem in testing around the world, right? We actually don't do longitudinal testing. We do short-term testing. And short-term testing is insufficient. What we often do, as my brother Daniel says, in short-term testing, is we look at a particular biometric, we see if a particular drug affects that biometric, right? And if it does, we say it's through its trials, then we release it. But we don't we ignore other biometrics. We ignore other variables. So we actually cherry pick. And the reason we cherry pick, and there's at least 50 authors who have talked about this and written about this, and in terms of sense making, it's unbelievably important. The reason we cherry pick is because even our science, right, is driven by return on investment. Our science is funded. Our science is almost never today pure science, right? Most science today is return on investment, and it's funded. And scientists have careers, and scientists have budgets, and they're in a win-lose metrics with other scientists all the time. The win-lose metrics, right, literally penetrate science. And to speak outside of the dogmas of science will cause you great loss, right? It's a big deal. So often, right, we think, oh, that's science. Well, whoa, stand back. Is it pure science? It's the same way that we used to think that religion was pure religion in the 13th century, right? But it wasn't, actually. We now realize, right, as deconstruction has showed us, right, cherry pick, Robin, cherry pick. Cherry pick means we pick parts of information, part of a data set, and we don't share the rest of the data set, right? We isolate and see how a particular drug, for example, affects one. And by the way, I'm answering a question in the chat box, everyone. We see how a particular drug affects a particular biometrics. We cherry pick, right, that particular, but we don't check long-term, right, what the other effects are. That's called cherry picking. You got that, Rob? Rob Cannon? You got that, okay. Let's go back to where we were. Someone tell me where we were, right? Anyone who asked a question, you're responsible for telling me where we were. Where were we, anybody? Where were we? Someone gonna tell me? Who's listening? Okay, where are we? Is anyone gonna tell me? Are you guys gonna leave me just standing here, not remembering the exact, that's the problem, right? Right, who's gonna tell me? Who's gonna tell me? Now, come on, who's gonna tell me? Where were we? Was anyone listening? Okay, right, we're in science, right? In science, what were we saying about science? 5G, thank you. Thank you, Enoch, now good. Peter, we're good. So 5G, thank you, thank you. What I'm gonna probably do, friends, I'm gonna try and run through. If you have a question in the chat box I can answer as we go, ask it, but then you have responsibility to tell me the thread. Okay, does that work? Okay, thank you, everyone. Right, awesome. Terry, thank you. Okay, so you've got to be aware of, taking a partial truth. So the partial truth is that 5G has not been sufficiently tested. The partial truth is that we are electrical systems. We're electrical systems, right? Our actual communication takes place electrically. We are electricity, literally. So it makes perfect sense. We can resonate with that actually 5G, right, which is an electrical interference pattern, as it were, right, might actually affect us in the long term. That makes a lot of sense. We resonate with that, and there's lots of information to validate that. Does everyone get that? But that doesn't mean that there's no coronavirus, and that the coronavirus is merely a function, right, of the 5G effect. It's natural biological material, natural genetic material, and there is no virus. Right? That's not true. You got that, Jackie? That's not true. That's critical. There is a virus. And it's actually a violation of intimacy to claim there's not a virus. Okay? And we're going to talk about what that means, right? Bad sense making, right? Irresponsible sense making is not just a detail. Does everyone get this? It's not a detail, right? It's a violation of the intimate universe. Okay? The Hebrew word for, and anyone who wants to take some notes and take them in the chat box with us so we can track, anyone who wants to write things, Zohar, Claire, Shahati, right? Anyone who's in, right? Christina Love, anyone who's in, right? Fantastic. Okay, there is a virus, right? Bad sense making is a violation. Anyone wants to write, let's write. So we'll be in the chat box and we'll be talking together and we'll have this double conversation, okay? Right, it's a violation of intimacy, right? Because here's a word. Remember Seinfeld? Who in Europe watched Seinfeld? Our European friends, our African friends, our Asian friends. Seinfeld, famous American television show. So there was a phrase on it, yada, yada, yada. And yada, yada, yada means I know, yada, 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 which comes actually from the Hebrew word Y-A-D-A. Someone grab that in the chat box, Y-A-D-A, yada. Comes from the book of Genesis, chapter 4, verse 1. We have scripture on this, okay? And yada means to be erotically intimate, carnal knowledge, in the classical sense of intimate relations, not the wider sense of intimacy that we use it, but one of its expressions, which is intimate relations. So yada means intimate relations, carnal knowledge, and yada means to cognitively know. Same thing. Does everyone get how beautiful that is? Language, as Wittgenstein correctly pointed out to us in the School of Positivism, language discloses reality, okay? So to know is to know cognitively, right? There's epistemic intimacy. That makes sense, everyone? There's cognitive intimacy. So sense making, right, is not this arrogant act. There's always an arrogant sense around sense making. There's this sense of my brother D, right? We were boxing this morning. He talked about this when I shared with him this yada idea, right? He talked about the arrogance, right? He left me a vox back, the arrogance that often exists in sense making, where sense making itself is weaponized. It's a separate self win-lose metrics. Does everyone get that? Right? I weaponize sense making. Sense making is a tool of the intimate universe, but all tools can be weaponized. Does everyone get that? Everything that's a tool, right? A spear, right? A long stick can take something down from a tree in the prehistoric times and also becomes a sharpened spear. And whether it's CRISPR or whether it's AI, all tools can be weaponized. So sense making is a tool and it can be weaponized. And I actually weaponize sense making, right, as part of the separate self win-lose metrics. And there's this arrogant fight that takes place and erupts, and we just get involved in another win-lose metrics. No, right? Sense making, what's the best way to say this? Right? Sense making is itself. Sense making is itself an expression of intimacy, right? Epistemic. Epistemic is knowing. And that's why the word for knowing and the word for intimacy are the same. Wow. Cognitive intimacy, right? And so therefore, intimacy functions all the way up and all the way down. And we're going to talk more about intimacy in a couple of minutes, but just for now, right? When I'm arguing with you over sense making, ready? Right? So sense making it's sensual. Sense is sensual. It's the same in English. Just like yada in Hebrew is knowing, cognitive, and carnal knowledge, erotic knowledge. So in English, sense is sensual. It's the same. You catch that? It's a universal language pattern, and universal language patterns always disclose the nature of reality, the nature of the intimate universe. So sense making is sensual, right? And I want to love the moment open. right? If I would say it dramatically, I'd say I want to fuck the moment open, right? But I add fucking because there's a fierceness. There's a quivering tenderness and there's a fierceness to sense making, but it's always about communication, and communication's always about communion. Does everyone get that? So if you see sense making happening on the web, which is conspiracy theory, but it's weaponized, then it's not actually sense making. Sense making is sensual. It can be fierce, just like sensuality can. It can be quiveringly tender, but it's always got to lead to communion. Right? Sense making is an act of making love with reality, making love with the universe, and making love with each other. You can't talk about sense making independent of the intimate universe. You can't do sense making if you're not making love. You can't do sense making if you're not moving, right, in a form of what Habermas called the highest communication modes. Right? You got to move. The highest communication modes have to actually open you into communion, intimate communion. It's got to create community, which is communion. Right? That's the communion. Right? This is the communion of pioneering souls, Barbara's phrase, right? And it's a unique self-symphony, which is a communion, which we're doing sense-making together, and sense-making isn't weaponized against each other. Sense-making is a sacred tool of Homo habilis, of the human being who is, right, a tool maker, and Homo amor transcends and includes Homo habilis. And Homo amor, to be Homo amor, I do sense-making as an expression of the intimate universe. I create trust, right? Sense-making, shared sense-making creates trust. And I begin to realize that there's a shared sensual story, and that which unites us is greater than that which divides us, right? And so when I do sense-making, I actually have to engage in intimate action. I have to be intimate with the universe. I'm going to talk about that in a couple of seconds. I'm going to put that aside for a second. But also, I've got to be intimate with you. So what's the spiritual practice of sense making? I have to begin to realize that one perspective doesn't hold reality. Particularly, I've got to be willing to bracket the sense that my one perspective holds reality, right? And I would trust Mr. X much better if I would actually feel in him the trembling of uncertainty, right? No shaming, no attack. And again, I'm up to talk to you in public forum or private at any time. I just think you're wrong. I mean, dead wrong, and disinforming reality on a number of levels. So I got to be fierce here, okay? But let's just feel this together. Lots of your facts that are wrong and the leaps you make in your conclusion, right, which you don't share with your listener. You actually draw people in through pieces, partial truths that are actually seductive and often correct. But then you make a leap and draw conclusions, but your listener doesn't actually track where the leap is. That's not okay. You with me? Is that okay? We're talking this together, okay? And then, right, give us some uncertainty, right? When you talk like a fundamentalist, radical certainty. Okay, my brother, my little brother, who's beautiful, beautiful man, who's now passed to the next world. He died in a car accident 5 years ago, was killed instantly, and I love him madly, right? And I got to be fierce here. My brother was a fundamentalist, right? I grew up originally as in a fundamentalist world. And fundamentalists don't know uncertainty. They've got radical certainty, right? So I reject the radical certainty of people who say, oh, wow, I believe the news. You shouldn't believe the news. The news is often information warfare. The news is often narrative warfare. The news is driven by ratings, which is a profit metrics, right? It's driven by entertainment metrics. It's owned by for-profit corporations that have quarterly reports. The news is not reliable. Tragically, the news is often disinformation. Okay, I got that, right? So anyone who's got this kind of mainstream certainty, yeah, the news, that's what's right. Oh, conspiracy theories, those are crazy people. That radical certainty, bracket that radical certainty. At the same time, anyone who says, wow, I believe all the conspiracy theories, and people who are actually arguing for the conspiracy theories who don't share the leaps they're making and who never have uncertainty, right? I listened, right, to an entire, right, very carefully, right, word for word, because someone in our circle asked me to, right? Two people sent it to me, right? It was originally sent to me by Christina, right, my muse, right? And then later I got it from Kristen, then I got it from other people, right? And I listened to this one particular conspiracy theory and then to three others. And the paradox, but Mr. X is paradigmatic here, right, is there was no uncertainty. So whenever you don't have, and here's a litmus test, for sense making. Whenever there's not a dance between certainty and uncertainty, beware. Buyer beware. That's a form of fundamentalism. So the spiritual practice of sense making requires bracketing your perspective and becoming intimate with the other person and actually taking their perspective. That's part of intimacy. Okay, intimacy means I'm going to bracket my perspective. I'm going to step out of my unique self, which is, right, I'm part of the field of intimacy. That's true self. I'm part of the field of intimacy and desire and consciousness. That's true self. Then I'm a unique quality of intimacy, and I'm a unique perspective. That's unique self. Then to join unique self symphony, which is to do sense making, I step out of my unique self and I feel you. Right? So one of the definitions of intimacy is, remember, right, is, and I'm going to give you the definition, right, and then we're going to apply it to perspective taking. And keep writing in the chat box because that's going to help me hold my thread. So I totally appreciate that, okay? Because we're doing so much here, okay? Here's a definition of intimacy that we're going to come back to. Intimacy equals, anyone who's up for writing this would be awesome. Intimacy equals shared identity. Intimacy equals shared identity in the context of relative otherness, and the word relative is in brackets. So intimacy equals shared identity in the context of relative otherness, and relative is in brackets. And this is literally just like Einstein's E equals mc squared changed physics. This is, and I say this with trembling humility and complete audacity because I stake on this. I know this is true. We've spent decades on this. So intimacy equals shared identity in the context of relative otherness, plus sign, plus mutuality of recognition, plus mutuality of pathos, plus mutuality of purpose. So if someone wants to be brave and put that all into one chat, we can actually see it together. Right? I think we got it, okay? Fantastic. Rock my world, okay? So now let's apply that. So now you understand you can't talk about conspiracy theories, right? We can't evolve the source code. We can't, right, generate the emergence out of this emergency without Dharma. Dharma is the new emergence. It's the new source code. That's what Da Vinci does in the Renaissance, right? As the Black Plague, the bubonic plague, sweeps through Europe, and he can't heal everyone. He tells a new story. He engages in sense making, which is the universe being Da Vinci. So we are Da Vinci together in this moment, and we are in this focused Zoom. We are in Florence right now. We're in Florence, though, around the world. Okay, we ready? We ready, guys? Are we good? Are we good? So, okay, so Dharma makes us, right, the new narrative, the accurate narrative, right, which is a bringing together of the best facts into the highest new order of information. Dharma is the bringing together of the best facts into the highest new configuration of information, which is what sense making is. Dharma makes us intimate with ourselves and intimate with the universe. Okay? And we're going to come back to that sentence. If we can grab that. Dharma makes us intimate with ourselves and intimate with the universe. Let's get back to that. And I want to go back to perspective taking. Let's take it step at a time. So intimacies, right? Intimacy, shared identity, right? In the context of otherness, we don't fuse, we don't merge, or we have shared identity, right? But we're not merged together. We have independence. There's both allurement and autonomy, right? Think subatomic particles that come together into an atom, right? So the subatomic particles still exist. There's not fusion, but there's union. They've created a shared identity called an atom. So intimacy is structural to reality. So the nature of reality is the intimate universe, and the trajectory of reality, right, which we've talked about at length, and I'm ecstatic to share that Barbara and I are about to publish a book in the next 2 weeks, working on it with Kirsten and with Venu and with Zach, called The Intimate Universe, right? Why a new story is the best response to existential risk, the most necessary response, okay? So let's just feel this together, okay? So intimacy equals shared identity in the context of relative otherness, right? So the subatomic particles don't disappear, but there's an atom, there's a new shared identity. The subatomic particles recognize each other, right? They're epistemically aware of each other, and they feel each other, right? There's what Alfred North Whitehead called prehension, which is allurement. There's this proto-desire to touch. There's this feeling of the subatomic particles, and then they create, that's mutuality of pathos. Then they create mutuality of purpose, meaning they function together as an atom, okay? So now let's focus on mutuality of pathos together, okay? So mutuality of pathos means, here's what it means. Mutuality of pathos means I feel you and you feel me. You get that? Mutuality of pathos means, right, it's part of the definition of intimacy, structural, all the way up and all the way down the evolutionary chain. It means I feel you and you feel me. Then there's a second loop. I feel you feeling me, right? You feel me feeling you. Then there's a third loop, right? I feel you feeling me feeling you. You feel me feeling you feeling me. Did you get that? And it's ad infinitum, right? But this is different than LB. This is different than, let's say, Ramana Maharshi. I am aware. Now I'm aware that I'm aware, that I'm aware that I'm aware that I'm aware. That's kind of the meditator's game. To take the I am and then to expand it, right? Aware of aware of aware, right? Which is beautiful in terms of true self. It's a beautiful meditation. But actually, you got to go to unique self. I'm a unique quality of intimacy. And at the same time, I'm a unique quality of intimacy, but we all share, we're all in the same field. So we're all part of the same seamless code of the universe. We have shared identity, right? And we have an enormous amount in common. And part of what we share in common is also our uniqueness, right? And so I then don't get stuck in my uniqueness. I actually use my uniqueness as a current of intimacy. Uniqueness is the currency of eros, right? I use my uniqueness to plug into you. Imagine, right, an electric cord and a unique plug at the end, which is my unique self, which plugs into you and into your outlet, right, in this erotic image, and I can then access and feel you. Right? That's called perspective taking. But perspective taking is not just cognitive. Right? It's an act of epistemic intimacy. Right? Perspective taking is an act of cognitive intimacy. I'm feeling you, right? You're feeling me. We're being intimate together, right? So sense making together is sensual, right? It's a sensual erotic act of lovemaking, right? Right? It's not the sexual, right? The sexual is a model for a larger eros, for a larger intimacy, right? It's intimacy all the way up and all the way down. So if you see people, which is happening all over the web now, these brutal groups attacking, right? Arguing, weaponizing sense-making, weaponizing information. Whoa, whoa, that's not sense-making. That's the separate self that's turned a tool into a weapon, right? And is engaged, right, in warfare. Warfare, right? And warfare has many forms. There's many ways we move to kill each other or to make a killing in the market, right? In these win-lose games, right? But that's not what we want to be doing. That's not Homo amor. That's the old Homo sapien. That's the weaponizing of information. Does everyone get that? Like, oh my God. So we need to do sense making, right, in this very new and very beautiful way. Okay, does everyone get this so far? Who's with us so far? We just laid down an entire framework. Does everyone get that? Who got that, right? It's like, wow, right? And it's one of the ways you can recognize, right, where to listen and where to pay attention, right, and where not to pay attention. Okay, so let me just go one more step, and then we're gonna dive in deeper. We haven't even started. We're just gonna get to some depth here. Okay, are we ready? Are we okay to get to some depth? Can we go at the opposite? Right? We feel each other. We're holding hands. Okay, we're in. Okay, so I'm just gonna give you just two examples, just maybe three, just to get it. We're holding hands just super quick. Okay, but it's gorgeous. Okay. So we got our definition of intimacy, right? And if someone can copy and paste it, that'd be awesome, just so we'll see it in front of us, okay? We'll see it in front of us. Intimacy equals, right, who can grab that and put it in the chat box? Intimacy equals shared identity, perfect. Shared identity in the context of relative otherness, plus mutuality of recognition, plus mutuality of purpose, plus mutuality of pathos, okay? So now, let's see, that works. We saw one example, subatomic particles in an atom. Okay, here's just a second example. Second example would be, nations in the world, right? Intimacy, shared identity, right? All the nations of the world are made up of human beings. That's world-centric intimacy, right? But we don't want to obliterate nations. There's room for a healthy ethnocentric sense, right? For the individuated nations, actually healthy nation states that actually are living in a shared identity, which every nation state is a unique self. Does everyone get this? We're now reconfiguring politics through the new narratives. We don't want just a global government. right? That actually is an open door to totalitarianism. We need a kind of global federation, but we need individuated strong nation states. So we need shared identity in the context of relative otherness, where we have mutuality of recognition, but we also have mutuality of pathos. We can actually feel each other, right? Right? And we can have mutuality of purpose. We can have shared purpose. So that's how intimacy would work in the political equation, right? In a couple, right? In a couple, I actually have to be not just contractually separate selves in romantic love, right? Which is a very particular configuration, which is often a strategy for the egoic mind. No, we have to be expressions, unique expressions of outrageous love. We're a couple. We actually have shared identity. We're Mr. and Ms. Smith, Ms. and Mr. Smith, right? We have shared identity. We recognize each other, but we're not fused, right? It's shared identity in the context of relative otherness. We have mutuality of pathos. We feel each other. We have mutuality of purpose. We're not just role mates and soulmates. We're in our language, we're wholemates. Wholemates means we're not just looking deeply in each other's eyes. That's soulmates. We're not just functioning together. That's rolemates. We're actually in an evolutionary relationship. That's wholemates. We're looking at a shared vision together. Okay, that's mutuality of purpose. Well, that's gorgeous, right? Right. Let's look at another example. Right, just one more example. Self. Self. Just two more examples. Self. Right. So I contain multitudes. Right. Walt Whitman. I contain multitudes. So I need to be intimate with myself, which means I need to have shared identity with all the parts of myself. And the second I'm non-intimate with myself, I split off parts of myself that I can't access. I can't be intimate with you. So I've got to be intimate with my protector and with my broken child and with my seeking mind, right? And with my innocent, right? And with my shadow self and with my split off anger and envy and rage, right? Right. Whenever I split off parts of myself and I don't actually contain multitudes, Whitman's phrase, I don't have shared identity in the context of relative otherness, meaning I have distinct voices, but they're all part of me. And there's mutuality of recognition. None of the voices hijack me. Right? There's mutuality of pathos. The voices recognize each other. The voices feel each other. And then the voices create shared purpose. Does everyone get how this is an E equals mc squared? It's the inner physics of cosmos. We've looked at it in terms of atoms. We've looked at it in terms of nations, 2. We've looked at it in terms of a couple, 3. We've looked at it in terms of self, 4. Let's look at it, 2 more examples. In terms of a company, an organization. Company has a bunch of divisions, right? Those divisions have to have shared identity. Like companies, anyone who's an organizational consultant, right? Companies break down because all companies and all agencies and all intelligence agencies, right, and all larger organizations, different factions fight with each other. There's a win-lose metrics, and they lose the sense of shared identity, which is why Peter Drucker, right, the organizational consultant, said, culture eats strategy for breakfast, but Drucker didn't have a way to create a culture. So there has to be intimacy. A company needs to be intimate. You need an intimate culture of shared identity in the context of relative otherness. Each division is independent. There's mutuality of recognition. We recognize each other. Each division feels each other. Then the divisions can operate with a mutuality of purpose. And Peter Senge, right, from MIT, tells a great story at the beginning of his book, Presence, about how a company which was making a new product, it actually was completely in overruns, destroying its budget, falling apart until they created, he didn't use this language, right? He doesn't have this, but he's describing, they create a sense of shared identity, right? Mutuality of recognition, mutuality of purpose, mutuality, right, of pathos. And they're actually able to complete the project, 75 days early. I don't remember the precise number, right? An organization. And finally, here's the last one, number 6. Just so we get this is real. And then we're going to go to information. We're going to go to conspiracy theory. Number 6, number 6, okay? Here's 6. Okay, here's 6. So 6 is sexing, right? So the first 5 were eros, now sexing. What happens in sexing? In sexing, there is shared identity. We become part of a larger, pulsing, throbbing, moving, ecstatic, open, right, entity. We become a larger one, right? We see each other with God's eyes and we participate in the same fabric of existence, and loneliness abates for a moment as we merge together in the oh God of the larger one. But there's still the context of relative otherness. We're part of the same field, but we don't lose our distinct uniqueness. So we can actually cry out in the moment of exaltation the name of other, because there's mutuality of recognition and we feel each other. But the separation has broken down, right? Giving is receiving and receiving is giving. And in the rest of the world, you're either giving or you're taking, right? You're giving or you're receiving. And sexing, that breaks down because there's shared identity, right? There's shared identity. There's mutuality of recognition. We call each other's name. We scream each other's name. We scream the name of God in each other's name. And we realize that each other's name is part of the name of God. And then we scream yes, because we're part of the entire field. And the Big Bang is exploding in this particular flaring forth in this moment. And from there, we can be wholemates. We can have mutuality of purpose. That's unique self-sexing. Right? That's this new work we're doing, the phenomenology of Eros, which I'm doing with Christina and Gabrielle. Right, and Barbara Marks Hubbard is deeply in this with us in 2 of the big volumes. Right, we talk about this thing called unique self-sexing, which is what we just described, which is intimacy incarnate in sexing. So does everyone just see what we just did? We just did 6 frames. Okay, 6 complete frames. And the reason we took time to do these 6 frames, because you get this is a big deal. This is the structure of reality.